How long have you been sitting out here?
He didn't answer. He just trembled. His lips were pale.
When was the last time you ate?
His teeth chattered.
Probably 2 days ago.
Tessa clutched the 2 bills in her pocket. Gloria's medicine. Her aunt hadn't slept for 3 days straight. Her joints ached every time she moved. $2. All she had. She went into the gas station. Returned
Here.
with a cup of hot chocolate and a loaf of
I
bread.
can't accept this from you.
Take it. You really need it.
His icy fingers gripped the cup. Tears streamed down his face. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know his family could buy the whole town for twice as much. But 20 years later, when a private jet landed on that cracked road, he remembered every penny. Carver, Mississippi wasn't on any map. Population, just under 1,200. 1 traffic light, 1 gas station, 1 laundromat. The nearest hospital sat 40 minutes away on a road with no streetlights, and most folks here had never been inside it, not because they didn't need to, but because they couldn't afford to. Tessa Adams had lived here her whole life. 19 years old, hands rough from bleach and steam. She worked the evening shift at Henderson's Wash and Fold, 6 nights a week, minimum wage, no benefits. The kind of job where you clock in tired and clock out more tired. She lived with her grandmother, Gloria Adams, in a narrow shotgun house on Elm Road. The porch leaned. The roof leaked. The heater worked when it felt like it. Gloria was 68. Arthritis had settled deep in her hands and knees, the kind that woke her at 2 in the morning. Pain so sharp she'd grip the bedsheets and hold her breath until it passed. She needed medication every month, anti-inflammatory pills that cost more than Tessa made in a day. Most months, Tessa stretched her paychecks to cover it. Some months, she skipped lunch for a week so the numbers worked. She never told Gloria that part. "You eating enough, baby?" "Yes, ma'am. Always." That was the lie Tessa told best. The night everything changed, Tessa finished her shift at 11. Mrs. Henderson handed her $42 in a small envelope. Tessa counted it twice, folded it into her coat, and started walking home. 19 degrees. Wind came off the fields in long, flat sheets, finding every gap in her jacket, every inch of skin. She walked fast, chin down, hands buried. She passed the old bus shelter on Route 4, out of service for 6 years. Rusted bench, roof half gone. But tonight, someone was there. A shape on the bench, curled tight, shaking. Her first instinct was to keep walking. Late, alone. The shape was bigger than her. But the shaking, it wasn't fear. It was cold so deep the body stops pretending it can handle it. She stepped closer. A young man. White, maybe 20. Thin jacket, not even zipped. Jeans torn at the knee. Backpack in a puddle of frozen mud. Face pale. Lips bluish. Fingers curled into fists. Not anger, just trying to keep blood moving. "Hey," he flinched. "How long you been out here?" "A while." Voice raw. "Where you headed?" No answer. Tessa stood there. Wind hit them both. She felt the envelope. $42. And deeper, in her coin pocket, the 2 crumpled bills she'd saved separately. Gloria's medicine. Tomorrow morning. $2 for the copay at the discount pharmacy. She looked at him. He wasn't asking for anything. No sign, no eye contact. Not even looking at her anymore. That's what got her. He wasn't asking. She pulled the 2 bills out. Thought about Gloria gripping the bedsheets at 2 a.m. Thought about the pharmacy. Thought about what happens if she misses the copay window. Then she looked at him again, shaking so hard the bench rattled. "Come on, gas station up the road. I'm buying you something warm." He shook his head. I can't let you do that. I didn't ask for permission. She turned and walked. After a few seconds, footsteps behind her. Slow, unsteady. At the gas station, she bought 1 cup of hot chocolate and 1 bread roll. $1.87. Handed the 13 cents change back into her pocket and gave him everything else. He held the cup with both hands. Didn't drink, just held it, like it was the first warm thing he'd touched in days. Thank you. So quiet she almost missed it. Don't thank me yet. My grandma's got a couch and a blanket. It's not much, but it's warm. He opened his mouth to argue. Don't. Just walk. They walked through the cold. 2 strangers with nothing in common except that one of them had $2 and chose to spend them on someone else. Tessa didn't know his name, didn't know where he came from, didn't know the shaking man beside her had walked away from a fortune most people couldn't imagine, or that his family had been searching for him for 3 weeks. All she knew was that he was cold, and she could do something about it. That was enough. Gloria Adams didn't ask questions when Tessa walked through the door with a stranger. She looked at the young man, soaking, trembling, barely standing, and said one thing. Sit down, baby. I'll get the blanket. That was Gloria. 70 years of Mississippi had taught her that when somebody shows up cold at your door, you don't interrogate them. You warm them up first. Questions can wait. Tessa helped him onto the couch. The springs groaned under his weight. The cushions were thin, faded floral print, but the wool blanket Gloria draped over his shoulders was thick, hand-stitched, old, the kind that holds heat like it was made for exactly this. I'll make tea, Gloria said, already shuffling toward the kitchen. Her knees popped with every step. She gripped the counter as she filled the kettle, her swollen fingers struggling to turn the faucet. Tessa watched from the hallway. That was the woman she'd just given up medicine money for, and Gloria didn't even know it yet. The young man sat still. Cup of gas station chocolate empty now. Bread roll gone. Color was crawling back into his face, slow, like the warmth had to fight its way in. What's your name? Tessa asked. Ethan. Ethan what? A pause. Too long. Just Ethan. She didn't push it. People had their reasons. I'm Tessa. That's my grandma, Gloria. He nodded, looked around the room. His eyes moved across the peeling wallpaper, the ceiling stain above the TV, the stack of bills on the side table held together with a rubber band. He looked at the space heater in the corner, the one that glowed orange but only warmed a 3-foot circle around it. And something shifted in his face. Not pity, something deeper, like he was seeing a kind of life he'd heard about but never sat inside of. How long you been out there? Tessa asked. 3 days in this town. Before that, he trailed off. A few weeks on the road. On the road doing what? Trying to prove something. He stared at the blanket. I left home, told my family I didn't need them, didn't need their money, didn't need any of it. A small, bitter laugh. Turns out I was wrong about most of that. What happened to your car? Broke down 2 towns over. Couldn't afford to fix it. Walked here. Phone died somewhere along the way. Tessa sat on the arm of the chair across from him. So nobody knows where you are? No. Nobody's looking for you? He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened. Then, quietly, I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Gloria came back with 2 cups of tea, one for Ethan, one for Tessa. Nothing for herself. She sat down in her chair by the window, pulled her shawl tighter, and looked at the young man with steady, unreadable eyes. You got a family, son? Yes, ma'am. They good people? Another pause. My grandfather is. Then you'll call him in the morning. It wasn't a question. It was Gloria's way, gentle in the voice, steel underneath. You didn't argue with it. You just nodded and did what she said. Ethan nodded. The house went quiet. Wind pushed against the windows. The space heater hummed. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and stopped. Tessa pulled a pillow from the hallway closet and brought it to the couch. It's not much. It's everything, Ethan said. And the way he said it, low, careful, like he meant it down to the bone, made Tessa stop for a second. She'd heard people say thank you 1,000 times. At the laundromat, at the store, quick, automatic, meaningless. This wasn't that. She turned off the light, walked to her room, lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling, doing the math she always did before sleep. $42 from the envelope, minus $12 for the electric bill, minus $8 for groceries. That left $22 for the week. And the medicine copay, the one she was supposed to make tomorrow, was gone. She'd figure it out. She always did. Skip lunch again. Pick up an extra shift. Sell the old radio in the closet. Gloria would never know. In the living room, a stranger slept warm for the first time in weeks, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like lavender and old wood. And outside, the wind kept blowing. But inside that house, for one night at least, everybody was taken care of. Morning came cold and gray. Tessa woke at 6. No alarm, just habit. She lay still, listening. Gloria's voice from the kitchen, low. Another voice answering. Ethan. She found them at the table. Gloria had made instant coffee, 2 cups, not 3, because there was only enough for 2. She'd given hers to the stranger. "Mornin', baby," Gloria said. Tessa looked at Ethan. Different in daylight, less ghost, more person. Still thin, still tired. But the color had come back. Gloria pushed a phone charger across the table. "Found this in the junk drawer. Fits his phone." The phone sat plugged into the wall, screen dark, slowly coming back to life. Ethan stared at it like it was a grenade. "You said you'd call," Gloria reminded him. Not harsh, just fact. He picked it up. The screen lit. 43 missed calls, 17 voicemails, over 100 texts. Notifications stacked so thick they blurred. His hand trembled. Not from cold this time. He walked to the porch and dialed. Through the screen door, Tessa heard fragments. His voice cracked on the first word. "Grandpa, it's me." Long silence. "I'm okay. I'm in a town called Carver, Mississippi." Another silence. Longer. "I know. I'm sorry." When he came back inside, his eyes were red. He put the phone down and sat without speaking. Gloria reached across and patted his hand once. No lecture, just one pat. "They're sending someone," he said. 2 hours later, a black SUV pulled up. Not a car you saw in Carver. Ever. Tinted windows, polished rims. The engine hummed like money. A man in a dark suit stepped out. "Mr. Brooks?" Ethan nodded. He turned to Tessa, reached into the SUV, and came back with a thick white envelope. "Please take this." "No." "You gave me everything you had. Let me—" "I didn't do it for that." "I know. That's why I'm asking." "And I'm saying no." Gloria watched from the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing. Ethan put the envelope back, stepped forward and hugged her. Quick, tight. The kind that says more than a speech. Thank you, Tessa. Take care of yourself, Ethan. The door closed. The SUV pulled away down Route 4 and disappeared the same direction the wind blew. Tessa watched until she couldn't see it anymore. Then she went inside, washed the 2 cups, hung up the blanket, and got ready for her shift. Because that's what Tuesday looked like in Carver. That's what every day looked like. She never mentioned the SUV. Gloria never asked about the medicine money. By the end of the week, Tessa had picked up enough extra shifts to cover the copay. The stranger was gone. Life went on. But somewhere in the back of a black SUV heading north, Ethan Brooks sat in silence, holding the memory of a wool blanket, a cup of tea, and a girl who gave away her last $2 like it was the easiest decision she ever made. 18 years went by the way they do in small towns, slowly, quietly, without anyone outside noticing. Tessa Adams was 37 now. She'd done what most people in Carver said couldn't be done. Worked her way through community college, got her nursing degree. Came back home when everyone told her to leave, because Carver needed a nurse more than Tessa needed a bigger city. Gloria had passed 5 years ago. Peaceful, in her sleep, in the same bed she'd slept in for 40 years. Tessa was holding her hand when it happened. The arthritis had finally stopped hurting. That was the only comfort Tessa allowed herself. She inherited the shotgun house on Elm Road. Same leaning porch, same leaking roof. But now it was just Tessa. The couch where Ethan once slept still had the same cushions. The wool blanket still hung in the closet. Sometimes, on cold nights, Tessa would pull it out and wonder where he ended up. If he ever patched things up with his grandfather. If he ever thought about that night. She never looked him up. That wasn't why she'd helped him. Tessa worked at the Carver Community Clinic, the only healthcare facility within 40 minutes. 2 exam rooms, 1 reception desk, a supply closet always half empty. Dr. Raymond Coleman ran it. 71, bad back, thick glasses, the only licensed physician who'd ever agreed to practice in a town this small. He was retiring at the end of the year. No replacement lined up. Nobody wanted to come to Carver. Tessa did everything. Checked vitals, cleaned wounds, administered vaccines, drove patients to the hospital in her own car when things got serious, answered calls at midnight, worked weekends, never said no. The pay was $31,000 a year, no raise in 4 years. She wasn't doing it for the money. She was doing it because if she stopped, nobody would. Then Victor Sloan showed up. Sloan was the kind of man who wore a suit to a gas station. Mid-50s, silver hair, teeth too white, handshake too firm. He owned land, 3 counties worth. His company, Sloan Capital Partners, had been buying up property across rural Mississippi for years, flipping small towns into vacation developments, golf resorts, gated communities. Carver was next. It started quietly. A few families on the edge of town sold their lots. Then the hardware store. Then the barber shop. Sloan's people offered above market value, just enough to make it hard to say no. One by one, blocks emptied out. Then the letter came. White envelope, certified mail. Return address, Sloan Capital Partners. The county had transferred Tessa's property tax debt, $12,000, accumulated over 3 years of underpayments, to a private entity. That entity was Sloan Capital. 90 days to pay in full. Failure. Foreclosure. Tessa read it twice. The words didn't change. $12,000. She made 31. After rent, utilities, gas, food, and clinic supplies she bought from her own pocket, nothing was left. She'd been shorting the tax for years because the choice was always the same: pay the county or keep the lights on. She drove to First Delta Bank the next morning. The loan officer smiled too much. "Ms. Adams, your debt-to-income ratio is not favorable." "I own the house outright. The assessed value is only $38,000, and with the existing lien—" "I've worked in this town 12 years, never missed a day." "I understand, but the numbers say no." "I'm sorry." She sat in her car in the parking lot for 10 minutes. Didn't cry, just sat, doing the math the way she always had. The way she'd done since she was 19, counting dollar bills in a coat pocket. 2 days later, Sloan came to the clinic himself. He walked in during afternoon hours, didn't sign in, didn't wait. Just strolled past the reception desk like he owned the building, which, if his plans worked out, he soon would. "Ms. Adams." "Mr. Sloan, you need to sign in like everyone else." He smiled, the kind of smile that has no warmth behind it. "I'm not here as a patient. I'm here as a neighbor." "We're not neighbors." "We could be. I'm developing the east side of Carver into a lakefront resort. Beautiful project. Jobs, revenue, good for everyone." He placed a folder on the counter. "I'd like to buy your property. Above market. I'll forgive the tax debt entirely. You walk away clean." Tessa didn't open the folder. "And the clinic?" "Well, that would be part of the development footprint." "So no clinic." "There are hospitals in Jackson, Hattiesburg. It's only 40 minutes. I know. I've driven it 200 times with patients in my back seat." Sloan's smile thinned. "Ms. Adams, I'm offering you a way out. Not many people in your position get one." "My position?" "Financially speaking." "I know what you meant." She slid the folder back across the counter. "The answer is no." Sloan picked it up, straightened his tie. 90 days, Ms. Adams. Think about it." He left. The clinic door swung shut behind him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. That evening, word got around. Carver was small. News moved through church pews and front porches faster than any phone. People stopped by. Mrs. Henderson brought a casserole and a card with $40 inside. "We'll figure something out, honey." Old Mr. Dawkins, Tessa had driven him to the ER 3 times last year, left $15 on the clinic desk. Pastor Williams offered to take up a collection at Sunday service. It was beautiful. And it wasn't enough. The whole town couldn't scrape together $12,000. Sloan knew that when he bought the dead. That was the point. Tessa sat in the clinic after everyone left. Supply closet door open. Half-empty shelves staring back. Dr. Coleman's retirement letter pinned to the board. Below it, the foreclosure notice. She thought about leaving. For the first time in her life, she actually thought about it. Pack a bag, drive south, find a hospital that paid real money. Then she looked at the appointment book. Tomorrow, Mrs. Patterson, diabetes check. Mr. Dawkins, blood pressure. A woman from Route 7 who needed prenatal vitamins and couldn't afford the drive. She closed the book, put her keys in her pocket, locked the door. She wasn't leaving. Not yet. A week later, help showed up in a beat-up Honda Civic. Nora Caldwell was a public interest lawyer out of Jackson. 29, sharp eyes, no makeup, a briefcase held together with duct tape. She'd read about Tessa's situation through a legal aid network and drove 2 hours to offer her services. Free. "They cut corners on the transfer," Nora said, spreading documents across the clinic desk. "The county didn't give you proper notice before selling the debt to Sloan. That's a procedural violation. It won't kill the case, but it buys you time." "How much time?" 30 days. Maybe 45 if the judge is sympathetic. 30 days. Not a solution. A pause button. But Tessa took it, because a pause was more than she had yesterday. Nora filed the motion. The court granted a 30-day extension. Sloane's lawyers didn't fight it. They didn't need to. 30 days would pass. The money still wouldn't be there. They could wait. For a few weeks, things felt almost normal. Tessa saw her patients, restocked the supply closet with her own money, drove Mrs. Patterson to her specialist appointment in Hattiesburg, fixed the clinic's front step with a piece of plywood and 4 nails. One evening, she sat on the porch of the shotgun house. Gloria's chair was still there, the wicker one with the flat cushion. Tessa never sat in it. Tonight she did. The air was cool. Not cold like that night 18 years ago, but cool enough to remember. She looked down the road toward Route 4, toward the old bus shelter. It was gone now, torn down years ago, but she could still see it in her mind. The rusted bench, the shape in the dark, the $2. She wondered where Ethan was, if he was happy. If he ever told anyone about the night a stranger in Mississippi gave him her last cent. She didn't wonder long. There was too much to worry about right here. Because Sloane wasn't waiting. He'd started pressuring the clinic's pharmaceutical supplier, a small distributor out of Memphis, to stop deliveries to Carver. No official reason given, just delays, then excuses, then silence. The shelves were getting emptier. The clock was ticking. The electricity went out on a Tuesday. Tessa was in the middle of drawing blood from Mr. Dawkins when the overhead lights flickered twice and died. The refrigerator in the back room, the one holding insulin and vaccines, went silent. The hum she'd heard every day for 12 years just stopped. She called the power company, got a recording. Called again, got a person. "Ma'am, there's a billing dispute on the account." "What dispute? We've paid every month." "It's been flagged by the property management entity associated with the address. I can't override it from here." "Who flagged it?" "I'm not authorized to disclose that." She didn't need them to. She already knew. Sloane owned a controlling stake in Delta Rural Electric, the only power provider serving Carver and 3 surrounding towns. It wasn't on any billboard. Buried in corporate filings nobody in Carver would ever read. But Nora Caldwell had found it. And now Tessa understood why the lights went out. It wasn't a billing error. It was a message. She drove to the gas station, bought bags of ice, packed the insulin into a cooler, and ran the clinic on battery-powered lamps for the rest of the day. 3 patients came in. She treated them by flashlight. One of them was a pregnant woman who needed her vitals checked. Tessa did it in the dark, reading the blood pressure cuff by phone light. The power came back the next morning. No explanation, no apology. 2 days later, the pharmaceutical supplier called. "Ms. Adams, I'm sorry, but we won't be able to continue servicing the Carver Clinic." "What? We've been with you for 9 years." "It's a logistics decision. The route isn't cost-effective anymore." "You deliver to Milldale. That's 30 miles further than us." Silence. "Is someone pressuring you?" More silence. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry, Ms. Adams. I really am." The line went dead. Tessa sat at the desk. No power threats today, but no medicine either. The supply closet, already thin, would be empty within 2 weeks. Mrs. Patterson's diabetes medication, Mr. Dawkins' blood pressure pills, the prenatal vitamins for the women on Route 7. All gone. She started driving to Hattiesburg twice a week, buying supplies out of pocket from a wholesale pharmacy. 60 miles each way. gas money she didn't have. But what was the alternative? Tell Mrs. Patterson to skip her insulin? 3 weeks into the extension, Sloan made his real move. The Carver Town Council held a special session on a Thursday evening. 5 council members. Sloan had 3 of them. Not officially, of course. But everyone knew. Councilman Briggs had sold his land to Sloan last year. Councilwoman Hale's son worked for Sloan Capital. Councilman Perry owed money to a bank where Sloan sat on the board. The agenda had one item: a motion to rezone 12 parcels on the east side of Carver for commercial development, under eminent domain. For the public good. One of those parcels was Tessa's house. Another was the clinic. The meeting was in the community center. Cinder block walls, folding chairs, a ceiling fan that wobbled. 40 people showed up. Standing room only. The air smelled like old coffee and nervous sweat. Sloan sat in the front row, gray suit, legs crossed, watching. Briggs read the motion. Hale seconded. Perry nodded. Public comment. Tessa stood up. The room went quiet. My name is Tessa Adams. I'm a registered nurse. I've worked at the Carver Community Clinic for 12 years. I live in a house my grandmother left me, the same house where she raised me after my parents couldn't. She looked at the council. This clinic is the only medical facility in 40 minutes. If you shut it down, people go without care. Not by choice, because there is no choice. Mrs. Patterson needs insulin. Mr. Dawkins needs monitoring. There are pregnant women here who can't afford the drive to Jackson. She turned to Sloan. A resort doesn't replace a clinic. A golf course doesn't check your blood sugar. And eminent domain doesn't mean taking someone's home to make one man richer. Dead silence. Then Briggs. Thank you, Ms. Adams. Anyone else? Nobody stood. 40 people. 40 patients. People who brought their children to Tessa, who trusted her with their health, their worst moments. Not one of them stood up. Tessa looked around. She saw it. Not indifference. Fear. Sloan owned their mortgages, their jobs, their power lines. Speaking up meant becoming the next target. She understood. She didn't blame them, but it broke something inside her. The vote was 3-2. Briggs, Hale, Perry in favor. Torres and Reed against. Rezoning would take effect in 60 days, pending state review. Sloan stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out without looking at her. She drove home in silence. No radio, no phone, just the road and the dark. Inside, she sat at Gloria's kitchen table, the one with the burn mark from a hot pan in 1994. Put her hands flat on the surface and stared at them. Rough. Cracked. 12 years of work in every line. Foreclosure notice on the counter. Council vote on the record. Supply closet almost empty. Dr. Coleman leaving in 3 months. Everything she'd built, piece by piece, being taken apart by a man who'd never set foot in a clinic in his life. She thought about Gloria, what she'd say. She thought about the porch, the blanket, the stranger on the bench. She thought about giving up. Not leaving Carver, actually giving up. Letting Sloan take the house, letting the clinic close, walking away from everything. The kitchen was quiet. The heater clicked. Wind came through the cracks, under the doors, across the empty fields. Tessa put her head down on the table. Nora Caldwell didn't sleep much. She also didn't lose. 3 days after the council vote, she showed up at the clinic with a box of documents and a look on her face Tessa hadn't seen before. Not anger. Focus. The kind that burns clean. He made mistakes, Nora said, dropping the box on the desk. Sloane's smart, but he's arrogant. Arrogant people cut corners. She pulled out a stack of county records, property transfer filings, tax lien assignments, council meeting minutes going back 18 months. Here, she pointed to a line item. When the county transferred your tax debt to Sloan Capital, they were required to notify you by certified mail at least 90 days before the transfer. You got the notice after it was already done. I know. That's what got us the extension. That's the small one. Here's the big one. Nora flipped to another page. Councilman Briggs voted on the rezoning motion, but Briggs sold his personal property to Sloan Capital 7 months ago. Under Mississippi law, that's a direct financial relationship. He was required to recuse himself from any vote involving Sloan's business interests. Tessa stared at the page. He didn't recuse. He didn't recuse, which means the 3-2 vote is invalid. Without Briggs, it's 2-2. Motion fails. Can you prove the financial relationship? Nora smiled, the kind of smile that has teeth. I already did. The deed transfer is public record. Sloan's people filed it themselves. She filed a formal complaint with the County Board of Supervisors the next morning. Conflict of interest, procedural violations in the tax lien transfer, request for an independent review of the rezoning vote. It wasn't a knockout punch, but it was enough to freeze everything. The county couldn't move forward on the rezoning while the complaint was under review. Sloan's 60-day clock stopped ticking. For the first time in weeks, Tessa felt like she could breathe. But Nora wasn't done. The story needs to get out, she said. Sloan works in the dark. Sunlight is the one thing he can't buy. She called a reporter. Not a big one. A woman named Angela Reeves, who ran a small online news outlet out of Hattiesburg. Local politics, community stories, the kind of journalism that survived on coffee and stubbornness. Angela drove down to Carver, spent 2 days talking to people. Tessa, Dr. Coleman, Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Dawkins, Pastor Williams. She took photos of the clinic, the half-empty supply closet, the plywood step, the battery lamps still sitting in the corner from the blackout. The article went up on a Thursday. One nurse, one clinic, one town. How a rural Mississippi community is fighting to survive. It wasn't flashy. No celebrity angles, no viral bait. Just a story about a woman who wouldn't leave and a man who wanted her gone. In Carver, people shared it on Facebook. A few dozen likes, some comments. Nothing that would make the national news. But the internet is a strange place. Stories travel in ways nobody predicts. A community health nonprofit in Atlanta reposted it. Then a nursing association in Memphis. Then a civil rights blog with 250,000 followers. Within a week, the article had been shared over 40,000 times. And in a glass office on the 32nd floor of a building in Charlotte, North Carolina, a man named Ethan Brooks was reading it. He was 40 now. CEO of Brooks Development Group, the company his grandfather Harrison had built from nothing and handed to him 5 years ago. Real estate, infrastructure, philanthropic ventures. Ethan had turned the company toward sustainable development, community projects, affordable housing. The opposite of everything Victor Sloan stood for. He read the article twice. The first time, he noticed the town. Carver, Mississippi. His chest tightened. The second time, he saw the name. Tessa Adams. He put the phone down, stood up, walked to the window. Charlotte stretched out below him, glass and steel and money. But he wasn't seeing any of it. He was seeing a dark road, a gas station, a cup of hot chocolate. 2 crumpled dollar bills pressed into his frozen hand by a girl who couldn't afford to give them away. He picked up the phone and called his assistant. "Clear my schedule for next week. All of it. Sir, you have the Greenville presentation on. Cancel it. Book me a flight to Mississippi. He hung up, looked out the window one more time. 20 years, and he still remembered every cent. Nobody in Carver had ever heard a jet engine. Not up close. Not like this. The sound came first, a low roar that rattled windows and made dogs bark from one end of town to the other. Then the shadow, sweeping across the rooftops like something out of a movie nobody in Carver had been cast in. A white Gulfstream touched down on the county airstrip. A flat piece of cracked asphalt, mostly used for crop dusters and the occasional emergency helicopter. The jet looked wrong there. Too clean, too expensive, like a diamond dropped in a parking lot. 3 black SUVs were waiting on the tarmac. They pulled out of the airstrip and drove through town in a line, slow enough for everyone to see, fast enough for nobody to stop them. They parked in front of the Carver Community Clinic. Tessa was inside, restocking the supply closet with a box of bandages she'd bought from a pharmacy in Hattiesburg that morning. She heard the engines, looked through the window, saw the SUVs, saw the suits stepping out. Her first thought was Sloan. More lawyers, more pressure, more of the same. Then the rear door of the middle SUV opened. A man stepped out. Tall, dark suit, no tie, salt and pepper hair at the temples. He stood in the parking lot for a moment, looking at the clinic, the way someone looks at a place they've been trying to find for a very long time. He walked in. Tessa was behind the reception desk, arms crossed, ready for a fight. "Can I help you?" He stopped, looked at her, and smiled. Not the Sloan smile, not the bank smile. A real one. Tired and warm, and 20 years in the making. "You probably don't remember me," he said. "Should I? 20 years ago, you spent your last $2 on a cup of hot chocolate and a bread roll. You gave them to a stranger at a bus shelter in the middle of the coldest night of the year. Then you took him home. Your grandmother made him tea. You gave him a blanket that smelled like lavender." Tessa's arms dropped. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. She looked at his face. Really looked. Past the suit. Past the years. Past everything that time does to a person. And somewhere underneath all of it, the jawline, the eyes, the way he stood slightly off balance on his left foot. She found him. "Ethan?" "Hi, Tessa." She didn't move for a long moment. Then her hand went to her mouth. Then the tears came. Quiet, sudden, the kind you can't stop even if you want to. "You remember," she said. "I never forgot. Not one day." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a printout of Angela Reeves' article. He'd underlined her name in blue ink. "I read this a week ago, and I got on a plane." Tessa wiped her eyes, looked at the suits standing behind him. 3 lawyers, 2 assistants, a woman with a leather binder. "What is all this?" "This," Ethan said, "is what happens when someone gives you everything they have and asks for nothing back. It just takes 20 years to get it right." He asked her to sit down. She did. He sat across from her, the same way he'd sat on Gloria's couch, except now the roles were different. His legal team had already been in contact with Nora Caldwell. They'd reviewed every filing, every transfer, every vote. What Nora had found on her own, Ethan's lawyers turned into a case. Councilman Briggs' conflict of interest wasn't just a procedural violation. It was grounds to void the entire rezoning motion. Sloan's tax lien purchase had been executed without proper notice, a violation of state law that rendered the foreclosure threat unenforceable. And Sloan's use of Delta Rural Electric to cut power to the clinic constituted retaliatory action against a public health facility, a federal issue. Ethan's lawyers filed everything with the county board, the state attorney general, and the Mississippi Department of Health. By the end of the week, the rezoning was dead. The tax lien was voided, and Victor Sloan was facing an investigation into misuse of utility monopoly power. Sloan didn't come to Carver again after that, but Ethan wasn't finished. He called a town meeting, not through the council, through Pastor Williams' church. The same cinder block community center, the same folding chairs. But this time, the room felt different. This time, people weren't afraid. Every seat was full. People stood along the walls. Mrs. Henderson was there, Mr. Dawkins, Dr. Coleman, Angela Reeves with her notebook, Nora Caldwell with her duct tape briefcase. Ethan stood at the front. No podium, no slides, just him. My name is Ethan Brooks. 20 years ago, I was lost, broke, freezing. I ended up in this town with nothing, and a woman I'd never met gave me her last $2. She took me home, fed me, kept me warm, and when I tried to pay her back, she said no. He paused. I spent a long time thinking about why she said no, and I think I finally understand. She didn't help me because she expected something in return. She helped me because that's who she is. That's who this town raised her to be. He looked at Tessa. She was sitting in the second row, hands in her lap, tears running down her face. $2 taught me more than my whole inheritance ever did. The room was silent. Then Mrs. Henderson started clapping. Then Mr. Dawkins. Then the whole room, slow at first, then building, then loud enough to shake the ceiling fan. Ethan announced 3 things. First, Brooks Development Group would fund the construction of a new medical center in Carver. Full service, staffed, equipped. Built on land the company would purchase at fair market value from willing sellers. No eminent domain, no pressure, no tricks. Second, a scholarship fund for young people from Carver and surrounding communities who wanted to pursue careers in healthcare, nursing, medicine, public health. Named the Gloria Adams Healthcare Scholarship. Tessa's hand went to her mouth again when she heard the name. Third, he invited Tessa Adams to serve as the director of the Carver Community Health Initiative, a new program under Brooks Development Group dedicated to expanding healthcare access across rural Mississippi. Full salary, full benefits, full authority. You've been running this clinic on nothing for 12 years, Ethan said. Now let's see what you can do with something. The room erupted. People stood. People cheered. Mrs. Patterson grabbed Tessa's hand and didn't let go. Mr. Dawkins wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. Pastor Williams said something about God's timing, but his voice cracked halfway through. Tessa sat in the middle of all of it, the noise, the tears, the applause. And for the first time in months, maybe years, she didn't feel like she was carrying everything alone. 1 year later, they broke ground. The field behind the old clinic, the one that used to grow nothing but weeds and regret, was cleared, leveled, and marked with orange stakes. A banner stretched between 2 poles. Gloria Adams Community Hospital, groundbreaking ceremony. Half the town showed up. Folding chairs in rows, a microphone on a small wooden stage, balloons that kept blowing sideways in the Mississippi wind. Tessa stood at the microphone. She'd written a speech on the back of a clinic intake form. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. My grandmother used to say that kindness doesn't cost much, but it pays back in ways you can't predict. She never had a lot of money. She never traveled. She never saw a building with her name on it. Tessa paused, looked at the banner. But she raised me to believe that what you give away matters more than what you keep. And I think she was right. The crowd was quiet. Mrs. Henderson wiped her eyes with a napkin. Mr. Dawkins nodded slowly, the way old men do when they've heard the truest thing they'll hear all week. Tessa stepped down. Mrs. Henderson was the first to reach her. Same woman who'd paid her minimum wage 20 years ago. Same woman who'd brought a casserole and $40 when the world was falling apart. Gloria would be so proud of you, baby. I know, Tessa said. And for the first time, she actually believed it. Ethan stood near the back of the crowd. No suit today. Jeans and a button-down, sleeves rolled up. He hadn't spoken. Didn't need to. This wasn't his day. He knew that. He'd built a career on knowing when to step forward and when to stand back. Their eyes met across the crowd. He nodded once. She nodded back. 20 years of gratitude and grace passed between them in that single look. No words needed. No words big enough. After the ceremony, after the handshakes and the photos and the paper plates of potato salad, Tessa drove home. She parked in the driveway of the shotgun house on Elm Road. Same leaning porch, same patched roof, but different now. Lighter somehow. She sat in Gloria's wicker chair, the one she never used to sit in. The evening air was warm, nothing like that frozen night so long ago. She could hear laughter from somewhere down the street, kids playing, a dog barking, the ordinary sounds of a town that had decided to keep going. She looked up at the sky. We made it, Grandma. The wind carried it away. But Tessa knew Gloria heard. Today, the Gloria Adams Community Hospital stands on the east side of Carver, Mississippi. 3 stories, 12 exam rooms, a full-time staff of nurses, doctors, and specialists. The first the town has ever had. Tessa Adams runs the Carver Community Health Initiative. She still wears scrubs most days, still checks vitals when the floor is short-staffed, still answers calls at midnight. But now she also trains the next generation. Young people from Carver and surrounding towns who received the Gloria Adams Healthcare Scholarship and came back home to serve. The shotgun house on Elm Road still stands. The porch still leans a little. The wool blanket still hangs in the closet. And every winter, when the first cold front rolls through Mississippi, Tessa drives past the spot where the old bus shelter used to be. She slows down. She looks. And she remembers the night she had nothing to give and gave it anyway. If this story reminded you that the smallest act of kindness can come back in ways you never imagined, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and leave a comment. What's the kindest thing a stranger ever did for you?